Keith Richards recorded the most famous guitar riff in rock history in his sleep. He woke up the next morning, rewound the tape, and found 30 seconds of a drowsy guitar riff, followed by 45 minutes of himself snoring. He had no memory of playing it. He picked up the guitar, figured out what he'd done, and thought, rough sketch, a placeholder, not a real song yet. Then the band voted on whether to release it as a single. Mick Jagger voted no. Keith Richards voted no. They were outvoted 3-2 by Charlie Watts, Bill Wyman, and Brian Jones. The two men who wrote the song didn't want it out. And when it was released, Richards claims he found out the same way everyone else did. He heard it playing on the radio. The song that came out of that tape became the most recognizable 30 seconds in the history of rock music. It was May 1965. The Rolling Stones were in the middle of their third North American tour. City after city, hotel after hotel, 2 shows a day. Keith Richards kept a Philips cassette recorder on his bedside table. A habit. In case anything came to him in the night, something came to him. He woke with no memory of it. He rewound the tape. There it was. A drowsy, half-asleep version of what would become one of the most recognizable guitar riffs ever recorded. Played once, then a clang as the guitar hit something, then silence, then himself snoring for the rest of the tape. He described it later in his autobiography. There's this 30 seconds of satisfaction, and then it's me snoring. He played it back. He figured out the notes. He wrote them down. Then he thought, this is just a sketch. We'll finish it properly later. Mick Jagger wrote the lyrics to Satisfaction in approximately 10 minutes. He was sitting by the pool at the Jack Tar Harrison Hotel in Clearwater, Florida. He'd heard Richards' cassette recording of the riff. The words followed almost immediately, pouring out of a 21-year-old musician who was exhausted, overstimulated, and furious at everything American television was trying to sell him. Radio commercials telling him how white his shirts could be, how to be a man, what to buy, what to want, what he was missing. He was on the road, thousands of miles from home, watching the same hollow promises repeat on every channel, in every hotel room, in every city. My view of the world, my frustration with everything, Jagger later said. 10 minutes. One of the most culturally resonant sets of lyrics in rock history, written faster than most people eat lunch. When Keith Richards brought the riff into the studio, he had a very specific vision for how the finished song would sound. He wanted a brass section, horns, a fat, punchy wall of sound on the main riff, the kind of arrangement that Otis Redding or James Brown would use to demonstrate where the horns would go. He plugged into a Gibson Maestro Fuzz tone, one of the first distortion pedals ever made. It had been on the market since 1962. It had sold almost nothing. Its own marketing copy said it could simulate booming brass and bell-clear horns. That was exactly what Richards needed. A horn substitute. A placeholder. He recorded the riff through the fuzz pedal and turned to the band. This is just a show where the horns come in. We'll replace it with a real brass arrangement later. The band listened. Nobody wanted to replace it. The Rolling Stones first recorded Satisfaction at Chess Studios in Chicago on May 10, 1965. Chess was hallowed ground. Chuck Berry had recorded there. Muddy Waters, Bo Diddley, Howlin' Wolf. For a group of young British musicians raised on American blues, walking into Chess felt like entering a church. The version they recorded that night was different from what the world would hear. Softer, less explosive. Brian Jones played harmonica. The energy was still finding itself. It was good, but it wasn't finished. 2 days later, the band moved to RCA Studios in Hollywood, California. Engineer Dave Hassinger set up the Maestro Fuzz. Richards plugged in the Maestro Fuzz tone. The tape rolled. Within hours, the song that Richards had written in his sleep, with lyrics Jagger had written in 10 minutes by a hotel pool, had become something neither of them quite expected. It sounded like nothing that had ever been on the radio. When the recording was done, the question became, do we release this? Keith Richards said no. He still heard it as an unfinished demo, a guide track waiting for the horn arrangement he had always imagined. Mick Jagger said no. He wasn't sure the fuzz guitar sound was right for a single. Then the other three voted. Charlie Watts, yes. Bill Wyman, yes. Brian Jones, yes. 3-2. The song was going out. Richards has given different accounts of what happened next. In some interviews, he says he accepted the decision. In others, he says he didn't know manager Andrew Loog Oldham had released it until he heard it on the radio, that Oldham simply put it out without telling him. What is not disputed, neither of the song's writers thought they were releasing a finished record. They thought they were releasing a sketch. The sketch reached #1. When Satisfaction was submitted to the BBC for airplay in the United Kingdom, the BBC said no, the lyrics were too suggestive. References to a girl putting a man off, the BBC's internal notes flagged the sexual implications. For a public broadcaster in 1965 Britain, it was too much. So the song was banned from British radio. What saved it were the pirates. Pirate radio stations broadcasting from ships anchored in international waters just off the British coast, beyond the reach of UK broadcasting law, had no such restrictions. Radio Caroline, Radio London, they played what they wanted. Satisfaction became a phenomenon on British pirate radio before it was ever heard on a legal British station. Teenagers tuned in on transistor radios, pressed to their ears under bed covers. The BBC had tried to keep it away from the public. The public found it anyway. Decca released it officially in the UK in August 1965. It went to #1. In America, there was no ban. Satisfaction was released on June 6, 1965. It entered the Billboard Hot 100 at number 67. Then it climbed 67, 26, 4, 2, 1. On July 10th, 1965, Satisfaction reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was the Rolling Stones' first #1 in America. It held the top spot for 4 consecutive weeks. At the end of the year, it finished as the third biggest song of 1965 on the year-end Billboard chart, behind Wooly Bully and I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie Honey Bunch. Keith Richards heard it on the radio, the song he had recorded in his sleep, with the Placeholder fuzz guitar, with the lyrics written in 10 minutes by a hotel pool, that he had voted not to release, was the biggest record in America. He has never fully explained what that felt like. Later in 1965, Otis Redding recorded his own version of Satisfaction. He did what Keith Richards had always wanted to do. No fuzz guitar, no distortion. Instead, a full brass section punching out the main riff exactly where Richards had imagined the horns would go. Richards heard it, and he said something remarkable. At least Otis got it right. Our version was a demo for Otis. He meant it. For decades, Richards maintained that Redding's version was the song as it was supposed to sound. The horns, the arrangement, the full vision. Redding had done what the Rolling Stones never got to do, because 3 band members voted to release what Richards still considered a rough sketch. The most famous guitar riff in rock history came from a device Richards used as a horn substitute. And the man who wrote the riff always believed the horn version was better. Otis Redding proved him right. Almost nobody knows that. Before Satisfaction, the Gibson Maestro fuzz tone had been on the market for 3 years. In that time, it had sold almost nothing. Gibson's own salespeople couldn't give them away. After Satisfaction, Gibson sold over 3,000 fuzz tones in 1965 alone. The following year, sales reached 20,000. One record transformed a failed product into the foundation of an entire industry. Every fuzz pedal, every distortion box, every overdrive effect in rock music, the chain leads back to the device Richards plugged in as a placeholder. You can hear the exact moment it switches on in the recording. At approximately the 35-second mark, there is an audible click, the fuzz tone, engaging, and then the riff hits. That click preserved in the master tape by accident. is the sound of a mistake becoming history, the tool Richards reached for because it sounded vaguely like horns became the defining sound of rock guitar. The hotel where Mick Jagger wrote the lyrics to Satisfaction still exists. The Jack Tar Harrison Hotel in Clearwater, Florida. The pool where Jagger sat with his notepad for 10 minutes in May 1965 changed hands in the mid 1970s. The new owner was the Church of Scientology. The building is now known as the Fort Harrison Hotel, and it serves as the worldwide spiritual headquarters of Scientology, the Flagland base, their most important facility on earth. Thousands of Scientology members travel there every year for religious services. They walk the same corridors, sit by the same pool, move through the same building where one of rock music's most enduring songs was written in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. Whether anyone there knows about the song's connection to the building is unclear. What is clear, the place where Jagger wrote, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, now belongs to an organization built around the idea that satisfaction is entirely attainable at the right price. Keith Richards recorded it in his sleep. Mick Jagger wrote the words in 10 minutes. The guitar sound was a placeholder for horns that never came. The two men who created it voted not to release it. None of that stopped it. Satisfaction spent 4 weeks at number one in America. It reached number one in the United Kingdom. Rolling Stone magazine later called it the second greatest song ever recorded, behind only Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. The Library of Congress added it to the National Recording Registry in 2006, calling it the quintessential rock song. The riff that started as 30 seconds on a cassette tape, followed by 45 minutes of snoring, is now one of the most instantly recognized sounds in the history of recorded music. Keith Richards has said he still thinks the horn version would have been better. He is almost certainly wrong.